Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. Tuesday night, President Donald Trump delivered the State of the Union address, and as you'd expect, we watched every second of it. So in this video, we're going to take a look at not only what he said, but also what the address is, and what it signals for what's to come. Oh, and who knows, we might also touch on the most viral moment of the night. Before we get going, a quick shout out to our Patreon page. If you want us to produce more US content, then throw us a few bucks and get a bunch of perks in return. And if we hit our milestone, we'll guarantee at least 2 videos a week on this channel. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 1 of the US Constitution states, "The President shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the State of the Union, and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient." As this passage gives no guidance about the medium of this information's transmission, it's been done in a couple of ways throughout the country's history. While some have delivered it in writing, since 1913, presidents have generally given the address in person to a joint session of Congress. For our British viewers, you can think of this as similar to the Queen's speech, given at the beginning of a parliamentary session. The president discusses the accomplishments of the previous year, and lays out the priorities of their administration for the upcoming year. In some cases, presidents have also taken this time to make profound policy announcements. For example, George W. Bush used his 2002 State of the Union to define America's enemies, calling nations like Iran, North Korea, and Iraq an axis of evil. But this year's State of the Union address came at an interesting time for President Trump, as it fell right in the middle of his impeachment trial in the Senate, becoming only the second president to give a State of the Union while on trial. He used the address as a chance to subtly, and not so subtly, make his re-election case. So let's get into what he actually had to say on Tuesday night. We don't have time to touch on everything the president talked about, but we'll give you a few highlights.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
And my fellow citizens, 3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
As expected, he began the speech by recounting the strength of the economy, touting low unemployment figures for African Americans, women and veterans, as well as talking about the creation of new jobs and the high stock market numbers in the US at the moment. Some took issue with his claims of success, highlighting that much of the growth was inherited and is just a continuation of an existing trend rather than some huge turnaround. For example, the labour market has been expanding for 111 months, and in the 3 years since his election, job growth has been slower than in the 3 years leading up to it. Trump went on to talk about USMCA, the trade deal between the United States, Canada and Mexico that replaced the 1993 North American Free Trade Agreement. If you'd like us to do a video on the USMCA or the state of the Trump economy, then let us know in the comments down below.
One of the biggest promises I made to the American people was to replace the disastrous NAFTA trade deal. In fact, unfair trade is perhaps the single biggest reason that I decided to run for president. Following NAFTA's adoption, our nation lost 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs. Many politicians came and went pledging to change or replace NAFTA, only to do so, and then absolutely nothing happened. But unlike so many who came before me, I keep my promises. We did our job.
With several subtle jabs at former President Obama, President Trump addressed the Venezuelan economic crisis, even introducing what he called the legitimate president of Venezuela.
We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to your family. Socialism destroys nations, but always remember, freedom unifies the soul.
President Trump did have a few more sentimental moments though, from presenting the Presidential Medal of Freedom to conservative talk radio host Rush Limbaugh, to recognising a 100-year-old World War II veteran and one of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen, along with his great-grandson, who has ambitions of joining the newly formed Space Force. Probably the most touching moment of the night was the reuniting of a soldier who had just returned from deployment with his wife and 2 children. Trump made a somewhat surprising move of endorsing a bipartisan bill to grant paid family leave to new parents across the country, and encouraged Congress to pass the Advancing Support for Working Families Act. While some Democrats view these bills as insufficient and desire a more comprehensive reform bill, others have argued that the move is an attempt to use this issue to show unity at a time of extreme polarization. This doesn't mean that Trump never went on the offensive though. As mentioned earlier, the president took a number of jabs at the more liberal 2020 opponents, claiming that he's greatly improved the healthcare system in America. Trump declared that he'd significantly reduced the prices of prescription drugs, improved medical transparency, and protected those with pre-existing conditions. Some took issue with these assertions, with PolitiFact rating his drug price claims mostly false. That's because many experts agree that Trump's figures were misleading. And Stacy Dusetziner, an associate professor at Vanderbilt University, said that although prices aren't going up as fast as before, they are still rising, which probably doesn't provide the average person with much relief. Continuing to take shots at his Democratic opposition, President Trump spent a large amount of his time discussing the immigration system in the United States, claiming that criminal immigrants are being released into the public in areas controlled by the Democratic Party. The president also spent time discussing the new branch of the US military, the Space Force. He described space as America's manifest destiny in the stars, and asked Congress to fund a Space Force, as well as the Artemis program, a NASA program dedicated to sending people to the moon. It wasn't the only military issue which the president brought up though. He also praised the new Middle East peace deal, touted America's fight against ISIS in Iraq and Syria, and applauded the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Probably the most viral moment of the speech actually came after he finished talking. As Congress was applauding the president, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi stood up from her seat behind Trump and tore her copy of his speech in half. In a discussion with fellow Democrats, Pelosi said that he shredded the truth, so I shredded his speech. This received a huge online reaction, with people on both sides criticising the move for increasing tension, partisanship, and demeaning her office. However, others did back her up, praising her strength in standing up to Trump's message. We'd love to know what you think down in the comments. So what does this all mean for Trump moving forward? Well, the speech pretty much outlines what his re-election campaign will be centred around, and unsurprisingly, the economy takes centre stage. Trump's team has been leaning on the economy heavily since day one of the campaign, and his address to the union indicates that that's not a strategy he's about to change. We also got some slightly more surprising information though. The Democrats have been heavily focused on healthcare during the primary, but Trump has, for the most part, avoided diving into the centre of the debate. His emphasis on healthcare on Tuesday, however, implies that he'll be focusing on fighting that battle more, and that he intends to fight on his own terms. His push for what one could call more socially centrist policies, such as paid family leave and affordable education, is also a change in strategy, and one that could garner support in more centrist communities. These issues are also subjects that he's likely to focus on in legislation as well. He's clearly going to try and make the most of it in the coming months, and this speech functions as an outline of how he's going to do that. Will it be enough to get him re-elected in November though? I guess only time will tell. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified when we post a new video, and be kept up to date on all of the latest news. Special thanks to our Patreon backers whose support makes these videos possible.